Hello, hello. Is this working? Hello, hello. Wow, packed room, standing room only. If anyone wants my seat, I'll raffle it off. But very exciting. I don't really need a mic or a podium, but I will use it nonetheless. I am Jennifer Levine-Bruno. I'm the Senior Vice President and Group Director at the Hearst Design Collection. And it is my privilege to be here in Atlanta. Excuse me. The roots of VERANDA started in Atlanta 35 years ago, which most of you probably know and cherish. And we are really, really proud that we're all here to celebrate the 35th anniversary with a May-June issue that you will all have, the biggest issue in 14 years, since 2008. So the support and the love for this brand in this market and around the country continues, so thank you. Thank you, ADAC, for hosting us, and to Theodore Alexander for your partnership with us today and for helping to curate this panel. We have Ellen McGauley, the Executive Director of VERANDA, who works in tandem with Steele on all things VERANDA, truly working daily on the content development across the magazine and the website. So she is going to introduce her panelists, but I think it's worth noting that in addition to Ellen's day job, she's also an incredible writer and an expert on all things related to home and landscape design, which is relevant today. And she herself writes many pieces that appear in VERANDA. She, as an editor with a well-honed talent for composing pages that also tell the stories visually, Ellen brings a really valuable perspective to the topic we're discussing today around photography. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining us and for staying with us for this discussion. Enjoy. To Ellen.
Well, Jen, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I also want to thank ADAC. We know that spring has sprung when we are sitting here at ADAC looking out at so many familiar faces and talking about topics like this that keep us going year-round. So I want to thank Katie and Mackenzie and the entire ADAC team for welcoming us back here again. They're an incredible partner, and we're so proud to be here. And I also want to thank Theodore Alexander. It was funny to me. It's such a natural fit for us because we're going to be talking about all the things we move in and out of photo shoots and doing all of these things. Is that right? Is that right? Theodore Alexander is actually this quiet thing that's in the background of all the shoots that doesn't get moved. They're part of the fabric of the houses that we shoot. And so I love that they're, our partner in this talk because they're sort of like these quiet pieces that are watching all of this go down as we're doing all the things we do on these photo shoots. So thank you to Theodore Alexander, and we're looking forward to the reception afterwards. Okay, judging from the size of this crowd, I'm not the only one in here that loves this topic as much. I could talk about this every day of the week and twice on Sunday, because the landscape is always changing. You as designers, this is this long-awaited, often very rewarding part of your work that can pay forward in so many different ways. But there's all of these mysteries to it. There's all of these things that, again, are always changing. And so I love bringing here the people that are the masters of this because, there's this push-pull of the things that can go right and go wrong and this eye and that eye. And with all of these creatives working in the same place, it can be either like a symphony or a street fight. We could have named it that, right? It's quite an undertaking. But when you watch pros like this, you see that it's actually part of who they are. It's part of what they see. They can walk into a room and see what's right, and I think there's so much to learn from them. So I'm so excited to be here. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce each of our panelists now. We're going to start right here in Atlanta with Mali Azima. She's kind of welcoming us to your city, I guess. So we're so happy to be here. Her work has appeared in VERANDA, none other than it was our 2021 January-February cover. And that was shot right here in Atlanta, Melanie Turner project. But Mali's work has also appeared in House Beautiful, Met Home, Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles. And I thought this was really interesting. What got her into, because again, photography and styling for interiors, it's its own bag, you know? And so I thought this was really interesting that how she got into this was working with interior designer Paul Garzotto, who assigned her some required reading. And it was The Decoration of Houses by Edith Wharton and Ogden Codman. And she began photographing his store. And then, just a small first editorial shoot for you was Michelle Nussbaumer's Dallas mansion. I'm sure that was just an easy lift, right? With all the collections and everything like that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And just last week, she wrapped another shoot for us. And so, how long ago was that shoot with Michelle? So that was your first editorial shoot, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was 1999.
Yeah, yeah.
And she had just moved to Dallas because she lived in California before that. And she was friends with O.J. Simpson, like family friends. Their kids played together, so they just kind of wanted to escape all that. But she had like her collections. I mean, there was not a spot in the house that you know, didn't want to shoot. But I didn't know what I was doing. It's my first interior shoot, and I didn't know about Polaroids at the time. We're shooting on slide film, no lighting, and it just turned out gorgeous. I mean, I still have a couple of those pictures on my website today.
I'll have to check this out.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, welcome, Mali. Thank you so much for being
you.
here. And speaking of California, we brought plenty of California to the panel. Our other photographer on the panel is David Tsay, who I first met years ago on a shoot in Whidbey Island. It was beautiful, and I had followed his work for quite a long time. And another thing that is so wonderful about working on these shoots, that's not really part of my everyday. They're probably thankful that it's not, you know. But I go in and I learn so much. It's like a master class every time, and that's the way it was with David in Washington. And so I'd followed his work for years, along with shooting books for national figures like Emily Henderson and the Property Brothers, both of them New York Times bestsellers. His work has appeared all over. Town and Country, House Beautiful, Country Living, El Japan, and best of all, Veranda. Most recently, so then you took the next year's cover, January, February of 2022, with our California issue. Yep. So David, welcome to the South.
Thank you. Thank you.
David's been in the business quite a while and has a lot to share with us today. So thanks for coming all this way.
Thank you.
And as important to editorial photography is top-notch styling, and you don't get more top-notch than Anita Sarsidi. She is also coming here from California. She's been in La Jolla for 3 years. But she brings a very unique perspective to the panel because along with a styling portfolio that includes Vanity Fair, Vogue, New York Times Magazine, and of course Veranda, she also comes from the magazine side. She was the design director for Elle Decor, interiors editor at AD. I got to know Anita beyond her very notable byline when she styled our Alex Papakristides house, which was probably 2 years ago. Well, it maybe ran 2 years ago, right? And that was in the Hamptons.
Yep.
It was his sister's house, was that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and he was an ADAC guest last year. And one of my favorite houses that we've had in Veranda was Todd Romano's home in San Antonio that you shot with Douglas Friedman. So that was one of my favorite. That was like kind of like this art salon, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of a modest house.
Yes.
In a way, but I think that's one of the reasons he chose it,
It was
right?
filled. It was like a little treasure box.
Yeah, yeah. So welcome to all of you. When we started planning this panel, the first thing I asked to just kind of get a sense of what are the most important things to talk about. It ended up being such a great question. I'm going to start with it today in terms of, because it netted so much from you. And I'm going to start with Anita, actually. What is great interiors photography? What sets that apart? What do you think of when you think of great interiors photography?
I think great interiors photography is capturing a mood, getting the feel and the soul of the place onto 2-dimension, what is in 3-dimension, and really capturing it in that visual I guess, medium and reacting to it viscerally. And I think later on you can break it down of why you like it and so forth, but I think it's that immediate reaction to it that you feel, and that's what makes it. It's the mood that it created, it's the feelings it evoked in you, and I think that is great interior photography.
Yeah, I agree. It engages the senses, right?
Exactly.
David, what do you think? What separates?
I think it's part of storytelling. It's like you're not just shooting a picture of stuff inside a space. You have to tell a story about it and to approach it from like a writer's perspective. Like, what does a light look like when you walk through the door, and what does it feel like when you first reveal into the room, and how do you walk through it? And you really just want to like smell the room from the picture. So you want to use your, vocabulary, photo vocabulary is like a writer uses words to describe rooms. So then it's more poetic and it's more kind of like immersive.
This writer loves hearing that. I love hearing that because I can't do that. Yeah, I can't do
I
that.
actually wanted to be a writer, and I realized I couldn't write, so that's why.
But you're right. I realize I couldn't write. Molly, what do you think? What separates interiors photography from great interiors photography?
Well, I agree with Nita and David, the feeling you get like of being in the space. And when I walk into a room or a house that an interior designer did, it's just like, there's so many details. They thought of everything. That's what interior designers do. And you want to show everything, but you really can't. So I just kind of try to make a composition that makes your eye kind of go around everything by using the light and what angle you're shooting from. So I think just good interiors photography just kind of makes you look at the photo for a while.
Yeah.
Captures.
It doesn't take just a millisecond to kind of get it. Yeah, it's like discovery, right?
Right.
Yeah. Something that we talk about too when we're looking at photos or even just deciding how we're going to shoot a room. We've already accepted the house and we look at it and we say, right, but there's these little things like when it comes to lighting or the way that you're styling it with doors open, that kind of thing, you can see a world beyond. You can imagine something around the corner. You can see that in a room you have chairs that you feel like you're part of this dining area rather than closed out from it. So some of those are just kind of things that you want to be able to, sensory things. Like I feel like I'm part of that, invited to that dinner table rather than just kind of like an observer looking into it. Sometimes those are the things that we talk about as where the design is done, the house is accepted. Now how do we bring the person, the viewer into it? Now, and before we get too far in, I just want to give the audience a sense of right now in spring 2022, who's comprising your client base? Is it overwhelmingly editorial? Is it commercial? And has that shifted over the past 5 years as I think that, we have our own platforms, we have different places of publishing, that kind of thing. Molly, let's start with you on that. What's your client base these days?
So these days it's mainly designers and advertising. I would say mostly designers and some editorial, where it used to be 5 years ago, a lot of editorial, just like different magazines, even, Self magazine or Town and Country or whatever. There would be just more of an array of magazines. But now it's like designers shooting for books, and I even had a couple of designers not too long ago. They wanted to go straight to social media after we shot their project. They didn't even want to wait for publication because social media, they get a lot of jobs on social media, and they didn't want to wait that year and a half before they could promote the project. And so, and advertising, it's gotten to where advertisers want that more editorial look anyways, because it's not like they're trying to sell you something. So that's been good too, the advertising.
They want it to have that same feel of editorial.
Right.
David, you have a bit of a balance, right, between commercial and interiors?
Right now I have about like 40% advertising, 30-40% editorial.
Yeah.
And 10, so 20%, I can't do math right now.
Yeah.
Designers, and I'm also working on a book, so in the springtime, so I've been traveling for that. And I think it's really important to do editorial because it kind of like lets you know as a photographer that your work is relevant to what's going on right now. You know, yes, I'm relevant in April. I don't know about May yet. We'll see.
We'll find out. Right?
Yeah, so I think that's like really important to kind of like, it's a good kind of checking point that you know it's happening right now and
Yeah.
you're kind of like part of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Anita, if we talk about who's comprising your client base, you're actually on a shoot right now, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
which
she's
I have to
stopped.
go back to
She's
after.
going back. She's in Atlanta. She was shooting this morning. She'll be shooting this afternoon.
Yeah.
But then she stopped by to impart your
Yeah.
wisdom. Who's comprising your client base these days?
Mainly designers.
Mainly designers. Do you think that there's been more of a demand for that over the past 5 years?
Yes, just because I think the magazine landscape has changed so much in
Right.
that sense. And there's less magazines, so what normally would have been taken up with magazines taking it, there's less magazines, so there's less opportunity.
Yeah, and they're needing to chronicle their work either
Exactly.
way, right?
And also just even now there's social media, so you chronicle it that way as opposed to before it wasn't, you know, it was mainly through magazines.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there are a lot of different avenues, I think, to be able to show your work now.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, and I think as you were talking about keeping yourself current, I think for designers, it's like, you know, as you meet with more and more prospective clients, you know, you're showing your most current work, so it's, you know, keeping that fresh, I think, is probably leading to a lot of these demand from designers. And, you know, just to also kind of get this out of the way early, what are the biggest mistakes that designers make when they're shooting their work? What are the pitfalls? What do you wish they knew? And kind of thinking of yourself on a shoot, you know, or some of the things that maybe you're talking through earlier that are, you know, obstacles. What are some of the pitfalls as you're on shoots with designers? David, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Well, I
You're
kind of have a reverse anecdote. Like, I worked with so many designers over the years, so then when we kind of remodel our house, I thought, oh, I know how to do this. I work with them all the time. I learn so much on set. So then I go and I do it, like, oh, okay, we're gonna put this here, and then I realized, oh my God, I only did this one corner. There's like this whole other side of the house. So it's kind of like this reverse thing where, you know, you can't shoot every single wall of the house, so then you have to kind of condense that room story into 1 or 2 shots that's compelling and that's kind of describe your whole entire space in 1 or 2 pictures, which usually ends up being, you know, you maximum 3 walls, you know. So in real life, it's really 4-dimensional and all over the space, and space takes you to another room and all that stuff. But in photo, you're trying to kind of like Anita said, taking this 3-dimensional space and put it in a, you know, 2-dimensional triangle. So you have to think in terms of like, okay, you know you designed this whole space, but how do you want that to communicate in the picture?
And do you find that in those conversations, you know, they're saying this is, you know, very important space. This is what this is. Let's spend some time on this.
Right.
And you're having input on, okay, I think this is really strong here, and this is what I'll do. Is that kind of how that works a bit?
And that's when stylist comes in so
Yeah.
important because, you know, from a photography perspective, you're looking at lines, architecture, and light. But then you need the other eye that goes, okay, we can layer this out, we can like move that, you know, like, so it's very collaborative. And with the designer, like, oh, this is a very important piece, and then we figure out how to work it in. So
Yeah.
you're, you know, back to her point, it's about composing this story
Yeah.
of the room in one image.
Molly, what are some of the challenges, you know?
Well, I think that sometimes, even if I scouted the house with them beforehand and told them to bring a bunch of stuff, they didn't bring enough stuff. That's that's the biggest. But not everybody does that.
Houses that
was
props.
just like
Yes.
yes. And sometimes a designer thinks she wants only this kind of flower in this room, but really another flower would have worked better for the shot because, you know, we're not seeing the rest of the room and we're just seeing the shot. So it's about what looks best in the shot. So you have to have a bunch of options because you're basically making art. So you need a bigger palette to just kind of pull from. And nice thing about Melanie is she has a warehouse full of stuff and she has like 14 assistants. And we're like sending them there all the time to get this and that. And
It shows how quickly you go through them, right? I mean,
yeah, sometimes you just need a bench or a, something that just, makes it all go around in a circle.
Yeah. Anita, would you agree?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, that's something that you have to convey.
Exactly. It eats up, I feel like, the layers that even though in the photograph it doesn't look like there's a lot of layers, it just eats it up in photographs. So it doesn't look cold and sterile. So it looks like there was a human there and it has a human touch to it. I think is the fine finishing touch to it.
Yeah, when you say human touch, will you expand on that a little bit?
It's just so it doesn't look, I guess, the best cold and sterile. Like nobody lives there, or it looks like a hotel room. Even a hotel room can feel inviting in the sense of not even layers. Like I said, it's just that feeling that you want to evoke in. And it's not always just one thing. It's not always a throw. It's not always more furniture. Each house is so different. Each space is so different that I can't even tell you that it's always bring a throw, always bring this.
Right.
They're all just so unique. It may just need something like a glass or so. It's very unique in that sense.
And I think we kind of, I don't know, I've worked on these enough times where I'm kind of like, I don't even know how to over prepare, because also it's like it's the designer in your shoots, everything is so you want the exact things that there are. I've actually found this is going to be horrifying to everyone, but I've said before, I love this. I'd love to see this a year later after it's been lived in a bit. And that's like horrifying to a lot of people. Like, you mean after they've messed it up? After they brought in a bunch of crap that I don't want there, And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Not that I want, but it's more like it's the hotel room thing.
Yeah.
You're just getting out of that phase to a more lived-in, collected phase. And I think designers can be a big part of that, and make sure that it's that kind of stuff, helping with the art collections, that kind of thing. But yeah, it doesn't go over well about the being lived in. It doesn't sound awesome, but sometimes you just need to get it out of the just moved in kind of phase. Now, obviously, one of the biggest challenges here is photography is a huge investment. And one thing I wanted to know is are there ways that you can cut corners? Are there ways that you can get around that? Or how do you kind of view this investment are there ways that you can sort of, and I think, Anita, I'll start with you on that. How do you approach that?
I think because it is an investment that it's a long-term thing in the sense of these images are something you will have forever. They'll outlive if they move, if they decide to change it. It represents your vision, as a designer of what it is, and so that will live forever in that sense. So, are there any shortcuts? No, but I think if there are, I don't think you want to take them, because I think this is your investment. An investment, you have to think long term. So you're already in it. You're already spending the money to shoot it. Go all the way with it and do it, because this is you. This is what's going to represent you to everybody that sees it, and what's going to live with you and the world for you to show your face going forward in that sense. So. I think more thinking in long term in that way. So it's not about shortcuts. It's more, I think it's the opposite. I think it's how you can enhance it, how you can make it even more than what it was in that sense.
Yeah. And one thing that you brought up to me, I think it was you on the call, was that viewers won't know that your client didn't want to buy the rug, or that they didn't want to invest in a piece for that wall. They don't know that. And so if this is a representation of your work, go and borrow those things, right? Go get those in, and you can take them out afterwards.
Yes, because like I said, that image lives forever afterwards.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so if you skimp on that and you decide, oh, well, the homeowner decided they didn't want to get all those layers, that's what you're going to show. That's what's going to be. That image is what lives. And so someone will be like, wow, that wall's really empty. They're not going to think, oh, I bet the homeowner didn't want to pay for that. They're just going to see that image and say like, oh, well, you didn't thoroughly finish it, I guess, in that way. And that's why I'm saying it's a long-term thing. It's an investment. So go for it, 100%.
Yeah. Mali, are these conversations you're having beforehand, and how's that working on your end?
So, yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for the designer to do what they wanted to do. You know, a lot of times the homeowner doesn't finish out the accessories, and then the designer will bring in all the stuff they wanted to do, or they'll find stuff that they want to do in that space, and then like 9 times out of 10, the homeowner ends up buying a lot of it for, you know, once they see it finished out and that business arrangement is over, and now we're moving to the art part of it. They can see, and they've lived there, and they can see, yeah, this does improve the space and helps pay for the photo shoot, actually. That's the way cut corners.
You heard it right here. Yeah.
And the homeowner feels like they're getting free design services anyways, so.
I do remember talking to a designer who said, all right, it's such a big deal now that like everything I'm bringing into the shoot, it has to come back with me unless you buy it. Like, we have to have this conversation early on, because it's like a source of tension. She's like, so we have to have the conversation of, just let me know, write it down what you're going to buy, but it can't be this casual, can you leave it here for a while or whatever, you know, like it's a lot of stuff, because she was bringing in all of these shoots. Yeah.
Right.
David, go ahead and invest, go full in.
Well, it's like whenever, a lot of times, I guess back to your first question about the landscape. 5 years ago, I wasn't being asked by designers to shoot a lot of projects. It was all coming from editorials and magazines. So now I'm getting definitely a lot more direct, which is fantastic. And I get asked to do like, oh, we have 50 shots before noon and stuff. And then I just kind of have to talk to them about what is it that you want from my pictures that you haven't been getting from your other photography shoots. So, because coming from an editorial background, we would shoot a room, you know, when we think it looks good, and then we'll go, do you know what? Let's come back to this at another time, and maybe when the light's coming through there, it might make these things look more beautiful and finished. So for me, from the photographer's perspective, we're really invested in this photograph looking as painterly and, you know, like I said, as that story. So, so I think a lot of it's about, you know, like really thinking about your picture and really invest, like Anita said, beg, steal, borrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Get that artwork on the wall, get those things in there.
We've been on a shoot where we borrowed art and it sold while we were shooting. And they had to come and replace it with another piece of art.
Wait a minute, who did it sell? Like it sold, not to the homeowner, it sold
No,
from the
to
gallery.
somebody, yeah.
Oh. Now, Mali, the relationship between you and the designer, you have, what I love about, you have designers who only want to work with you. I mean, you are, I think that's a challenge, is finding the team that gets you, that gets what you're after. Like David said, like, what are you getting? What do you want from me that you haven't been getting? Because sometimes that gets to maybe some of the problems or expectations that need to be like busted, right? But is the relationship key? Does that lead to better photos?
Yes, because, well, okay, so for every artist, the most important thing is their relationships. And when you're working on something that's beautiful, so artists can see things poetically. So of course their relationships are important.
Yeah.
And so you want everything at the shoot to be like on a higher level with beauty and love. You're making something beautiful. And then the designers, that's what they do. They make beautiful houses, beautiful rooms. They work with beautiful objects. They know what beauty is. And they make houses. I mean, what better thing to create? Yeah. And so I try to make them look as good as they can. Like I ask them always, what's the most important thing to you in this room? So, because I'm not a designer, they're keeping up with the design world and see what's going on, and they're being creative in their own way, and whatever is important to them is what they created usually. So what's different than anybody else? So I try to showcase that for them and do it beautifully.
Yeah, and I think there's if the relationship is right, then there's that level of trust where if there's a problem, I don't know how to fix it, and they can look to you and say, because it's like you're getting not just ability, and you're getting an eye and years of experience. So there's all this problem solving there, right. I know why it's not working. I know why it's not magic yet, And David, do you sort of feel with relationships, is that when it works best?
It's definitely collaborative because, you created the room, you had a vision for it. And also at the same time, you've always thought of this room as being shot a certain way, but then, when the photographers and the stylists come in, we might have seen something else that's completely different that you never thought of. And I think a lot of times it surprises a lot of interior designers. Like, oh my God, I never thought of it looking at it that way. That's and
it's like your husband picking out dresses for you. They always do a better job.
Really?
Or boyfriend, yeah.
I don't know, I'm not married, I don't know.
Because they see you in a certain way.
And a lot of times when I'm shooting a project, I don't see from the designer's point of view, in the three-dimensional. So after a shoot, as the shoot progresses, I always put up collage walls as we shoot.
Oh, I love those. I love those.
Yeah, because I want to see that everything's cohesive, everything's connected. It looks like one story. It's and as I'm seeing the story build, I'm like, oh my God, I love how they did this over here, and then they had that texture over there.
Yeah.
And they all talk to each other. It's like, oh my God, they know what they're doing. This is amazing. And it's surprises me too, to kind of see it in a two-dimensional space. But then it was just, it's always delightful to see that. It makes me happy.
That's a really good point.
I feel like I solved a puzzle.
Yeah, no, that is a really good point. David will put together his photos as we're going through. So we've already seen, we're here's the living room shot, but here's the detail shot. And that is a very editorial, you start to see the story of the house. And if you're not seeing the story of the house, if you're just seeing a static thing, then you're not getting a story, you're getting rooms.
Right.
And we love those boards.
Because, sometimes you're like, oh, in this shot, the light comes from here, but this one, you want to kind of from opposites so that they play off each other and kind of stuff. So that's why a lot of times I will reshoot certain shots at different times of day.
Yeah.
To figure out what's the best time to shoot certain shots instead of just running through and get everything as one.
Yeah. And Anita, coming from the magazine world into the styling world, you must have gone in with a good amount of relationships and the people that call you I'm going to work with Anita.
Yes.
That's what.
Yeah.
And do you find that makes for a more seamless kind of?
Yes.
I know what you're thinking before you're thinking it kind of shoot. I may be just being optimistic.
Two different things. For magazines, it was different. For magazines, you came in already edited. If it's a 12-room house, you're already formulated in your mind the visual story. So you'll shoot 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, not all 6 of them or so forth.
Right.
So you're already edited in your head before the visual story, how it's going to unfold. For designers, it's different because they do want to capture all the room, which sure you're going to document. So it's different in that way, but you still, I think, come in as an editor from an editorial point of view. So when you, like David was saying, you come in looking at it in a different way, and a lot of the designers have been with this, looking at it day in, day out for 2 years, maybe more years, I don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes, it's a different point of view
Yeah.
for them to see it. As David said, it's like, oh, sometimes they're like,
You
I
do,
never
you
saw
need
it
the fresh
like
eyes.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the project will come a little more alive in a different way in that
Yeah.
way if you see it
Yeah.
from a different point of view sometimes that way.
And I can't help but think, as you say this, the number of times, David referred to this as like writing and storytelling, and the number of times I've had a story text to Steele, and I just said, I don't know if this is good or bad anymore. This is like, I've had looked at it, so, and she looks at it like very quickly and knows exactly whether it's good or bad, you know, or know exactly what the fix is, you know? And I think it's the same thing here, you need the fresh eyes. Going back to, we were talking a bit about number of shots, and yes, that's true. With magazines, we go in and we say, we've got 2 days, we can generally do, I don't want to say 18, but sometimes it is 18.
Yeah.
And you know, our photo editors were going through and be like, listen, I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to have to start prioritizing because we're already up to 20 or whatever it is in our art meeting. But you know, when you're being commissioned by designers, that's something you have to be realistic about. When they come in and you, of course, you want to shoot everything because this is the record of your design project. So how do you handle, like, what do you think of in terms of timing? Let's talk a little bit about how long it takes to shoot and be realistic and make it captivating and magnetic rather than just shooting and moving on. Let's start with you, David.
Like, you know, when you first walk you do a quick scout of the house and you look at where the light's coming from and all that stuff, and you kind of collaborate with the designer and then the stylist on what should be kind of like just a quick brainstorming session about what shots there might be, and then you talk to the designer about what the important parts are, and then you prioritize it that way. And I think a lot of them, it's just, you know, you have your dream list of everything you want to shoot, and then let's prioritize because we really only have, in real life, this amount of time.
Yeah.
So let's make the most.
They can hire you for more time,
Yeah.
right? They can hire you for more time.
Well,
but,
you know.
Yeah.
But you can't be there forever.
Yeah, right.
And then shoot everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think doing your dream list, and let's all like kind of brainstorm and then prioritize important to how the light moves and how the space works.
Yeah. Molly, how do you look at timing? How do you plan for that?
Well, I usually tell them it's like an hour a shot. So if they want those extra shots, I guess hour would be kind of maximum if you're styling and lighting it. But, you know, and then I say, well, if we have time for the extra shots, we can do that. But I think we should plan for the shots you really want and keep in mind of how long it takes.
Yeah, yeah.
Some shots do come together in like 10
Yeah,
minutes,
they do.
amazingly, you know.
Right.
True.
And
People always ask you to hand hold. Can you do a quick hand hold shot? And
oh yeah, right.
you have to there's technical reasons you can't do that, but sometimes you can. Depends on light and everything. But you know, and if I can do that, I will.
But you sort of want to be sort of
realistic.
realistic and also follow the light, right? I mean,
Right.
that's you don't want to just shoot because this is the way you planned it. David, I've been on a
Right.
shoot with you where we've been like, this is when we were supposed to shoot morning this, and you're like, that's not actually going to work. We're going to come back later, and then it kind of like we shift everything around because the light is
Right. And it's
everything.
like you spend so much time picking out all these furniture pieces and textiles and everything you want, like, and then the only thing that's helping you describing all these really high-end, beautiful things is how it's lit.
Yeah.
Like a piece of leather that's really expensive could look like plastic if not lit right. So,
Good
you know,
point.
a lot of all those things, it's like we want it to look like $1 billion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, not to be gross, but it's sort of like in food styling where like glazed pecans can look really beautiful or they can look like cockroaches, like a whole bowl of cockroaches. It's true. So it's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important. And then Anita, let's dig in real quick on styling. What is your process for styling? Because obviously this is so key, and how much is the right amount of prep time? What is your process? How do you plan for it?
I don't know that there's a right amount of prep time. I think, like I said, every house is unique, and some need more than others. I don't know how I would say I prepare for it. I think.
But you're communicating with the designer saying, if you bring in like, this is what it needs, right? If you're being hired by a designer.
Yeah, it depends how much, yes. I mean, I would see pictures beforehand, scouting pictures beforehand, and from there discuss if it needs how many more layers or it doesn't in that sense. But I think in the sense of how much time it takes, other than the necessary flowers, so forth, it's not like an ad job where you spend 5 days of prep because you're shopping for, you're creating something that isn't already there.
Right, right.
Designers have already spent that effort, you know, whether it's a year, 2 years, they've already kind of got the basis of it. You're just doing the finishing touches,
Yeah.
adding the. So I'm not quite sure. Like I said, I don't know how to answer because I don't know. There's not a definitive, I guess, time thing. The process would be as simple, I guess, as that, is looking through it and saying, okay, we really need to get maybe a rug here or that there, things like that. Other than that, it doesn't. It's sort of a bit fluid in the communication of there isn't sort of a rigid sort of thing.
Well, in trying to figure out what you do need in a house, and I think styling is it's so different in a lot of ways than interior design. The method I would use, like, when in doubt, especially if you're, you know, on a smaller budget and need to do it yourself. There's two reasons to look at. If you look at some of your favorite magazines and see what they've put on the tables, but like the magazines, the kind of magazines that you want to submit to, and see if they have like 4 watermelons on the table and they're all cut up and they've got all these oranges too, and that might be what they want. If you look at it, it's a little bit more sparse. If it's some flowers and a loaf of bread, just do that, right? Like, you know, because it's kind of hard to know the balance of overstyling and understyling. You don't want a coffee table that's completely blank. A lot of times we'll get in photos, and I mean, we're reshooting anyway, but we're like, that's not something we could ever pick up because there's nothing on the table, kind of thing. But you can look in and kind of take cues.
I think also a lot of it is, like, I'll look at those scouting shots and you kind of go, but really, really the ultimate is when you step into the house. And this house always speaks to you in that way, and I think you take that lead and you go from there.
Yeah.
So the scouting shots will take you only so far, but it's really, you have to feel it. You have to walk in, you have to feel it, and you have to sort of go with that. Because sometimes sometimes like you said, the coffee table does want to be layered. Sometimes it doesn't, and the house will sort of reveal itself to you.
Yeah.
And so the soul of the house you get, and you just take that lead and you go with it in that sense.
I love that. I think that's a whole other panel too. The soul of the house. We can get into all of that.
And I think from what Anita said, it's also scale of things, right? It's like you can see scouting pictures, but you don't notice the scale of how things play next to each other. A vase you think might look great in real life, might not work in
the
photo.
scale.
A lot of that stuff happens.
Right. I want to make sure we have time for questions, so I'm going to breeze through this last part really quickly, which is, how do you find the right photographer, the references, talking to people? We talked about it earlier, and this is looking in your favorite magazines, right?
Yes.
Looking for the style that you want, the people that are doing things like
Look for the
work.
names.
Look for the names, right? That's your best, or social media, right? Looking.
Right, lots of social media interest lately, that's what I get.
Is that people are finding you that way? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So, because I know that's also half the battle, is just like contacting them, and you want to hear from. I mean, like this isn't something where it's like, I don't know if I can call him. You can, right? You can call her.
Email preferably.
What?
Don't direct message, because I might not get it for 2 years, but.
Okay, I do want to see if there's any questions in the audience where I forgot to mention that. Please, yes, right up here.
And I have a mic, so if you'll let me just raise
We're
your
right
hand and
up
I
here.
will get to you.
We're right up here.
I like that you alluded to natural light. recently, and I wondered if you ever plan your, the time of your shoot for where you know the sun will be or what direction the main rooms face.
Yes, we have apps that tell you exactly where it'll be at exactly what time, actually. Sunseeker.
Sunseeker.
I also use lighting all the time.
Yeah.
So I see what the natural light is, and sometimes photo doesn't see it the same way your eye sees it. So we use modifiers to kind of like enhance what's happening.
Good question, yeah.
Let me come over to you really
I
quickly.
think we've got over here.
You guys are all so incredibly talented, by the way. I
thank
mean,
you.
beautiful. My question is about styling because I feel like it's just magical. I mean, it really is. And I tend to like everything with a big green branch, everything. But my question is, when you're going to start working with a stylist, which we have our first photo shoot, I'm excited, how is the best way to prepare as far as like what to pack, how much of things to pack, you know, if the stylist is not bringing everything?
Always more is better. As I said, it just heats it up. If you're in doubt, bring it. You will, because even if you think you need it for that room, you'll probably fill it in somewhere else. So as I said, the more, the better. You will go through it, I promise.
Yeah, borrow, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a given. I mean, that's a given, just the other layers of it. And also, it's what is your, stop for a minute, and what was your vision of that room? When you first were given this assignment, when you first met them, when you walked in that room, what did you want to do to it? And go with that. And I'm sure you had to amend it, but the original, I'm sure what you had, you should, those are the props you need for it. Those are, you know, what you really had intentionally had planned.
I think it should be like, it's like a fantasy thing. Like, I would say 99% of the time, people that are looking at the pictures will never walk into that house, right? So you want to make that story for them. You want to
Absolutely.
achieve your original
Vision for it,
Yeah.
right.
Nobody's gonna go check, hey, that painting wasn't there.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
You all have been talking a good bit about light and about the soul of the house, which is very important, and you're all very talented. But what about angles? Do you want to comment about angles?
I'll comment.
Yeah.
So usually eye level to seat level is a good angle to help you kind of feel like you're in the room. Anything higher than that, you're just kind of looking in.
Like a
So-
surveillance camera.
Yeah. And, you know, I have like, I don't know, 12 lenses. It's just, you just have to have different lenses that work for each room. Sometimes a wide angle will work. Sometimes you have to use a wide angle. Try not to use a wide angle if you can to make it more intimate. Lights off. Sometimes a light on, a chandelier on, or whatever. Sometimes it'll work, but it's like making a painting. But if you start eye level to seat level, that's usually a good place to be.
And I think there's a lot of like, you know, a lot
Eye
of
level if
straight
you're
on
short.
shots. A lot of straight on shots, and you want to make sure that when you're doing a straight on flat to the wall shot, you're looking at something instead of just like
A focal
like-
point.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you know, you want to know like, oh, where did you want your eye to start?
Yeah.
And then you let it run off that way.
I would also note really quickly that a lot of times when we're doing our shot lists for the magazine, we're saying best angle because not to kick the, like not to just, but we're like, we want to see what they see. We want to see when they walk in the room. We want to see what David or Mali or Anita walks in and sees. That's the shot, you know, because we're not walking in the room a lot of the times. So anyway, that's a nice way to look at it too, is that you have these pros when you are hiring.
Hey, I have a question on flowers. Is there any direction there. Like I sometimes get carried away because I love flowers and I love color, but sometimes I feel like less is more. Is there any sort of specific guidelines for that?
No. No. Some places call for go overboard, some don't. So I don't have any hard and fast answer for that. No, you love flowers, and that's what the space is, and that's what you have created. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. And some places it's a little overkill, but you will know that in the room. So.
Unless you know that it's going in a spring issue, maybe?
Yes. Seasonal's always good, yes.
Hey there. Okay, I want to know, I've heard rumors in like photography, editorial world. Are there any produce items or flowers that are just no more? Like no more artichokes? What's, just out of curiosity.
I think different magazines, I know for sure we never wanted orchid, like the white orchids
Yeah.
that you see
We're not
at
big on
Banana
orchids.
Republic.
orchid.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was mainly.
Yeah, I'm glad and generally when it comes to produce, what we look at is like, is it taking away from the rest of the room? You know, are we looking at a big fat watermelon this entire time when there's these beautiful cabinets and like, and that when you know, and that ends up in the focal point of the shot, that kind of thing. So, and then monochromatic always works well. Sometimes, you know, if you have some tangerines or something like that, I don't know. But again, every house is different, right? So it's hard to say that. But we all agreed on orchid.
Yeah. That's true.
I think it's that story building thing again. It's like, who's this? You're describing the room like a person. It's like, would they wear that? You know?
Yeah, would they wear that?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, would this person wear that? Like,
That's a great
that
point.
flower here, you know, or something else.
Yeah. What would your kitchen wear?
And a lot of times you can just go outside and pick some stuff, some branches. That kind of makes it look unique and
Local's always good.
of the place.
As long as they're not orchids.
Foraging, yeah.
Hello, I'm very south of Atlanta, but I'm part of a group of luxury designers across the country, and we had a heated debate on just this, not heated, but everybody had so many different opinions on photography. So can you explain a little bit more about stylists and when a designer needs a stylist, how many assistants we should have? I mean, I love Melanie Turner's work. I don't have 7 stylists, but I love your shots.
She is the stylist. She is the stylist.
You are?
Yes,
Okay.
she is.
Oh, I love your work, your husband's work. But say, you know, you have a project manager and a design assistant. I do have a lot of inventory, but would you recommend a stylist? Because for me, doing a photo shoot or magazine photo shoot is going to be a big deal. It might be just a once-a-year thing. So I want to make sure I do it right. So what can you, I mean, for somebody who's just doing it the first time, what would be helpful information?
I think find a stylist you really want to work with, not just a stylist. Like just having a stylist on set is different from like having this is the person that I want to help me achieve this vision on a photograph. So just finding the right stylist that you really like to collaborate with.
Yeah.
Well, look at the magazines, like, and look at all the names, and like, and social media.
Social media,
Yeah, like people's aesthetic.
we always credit, the photographers usually credit the stylists.
Yeah.
But I work with a lot of designers that style their own. I mean, Melanie, Kristen.
So it's a total, like Melanie, how many people do you bring on your shoot?
It depends on the project. Last shoot we did, we have a lot of people in there because it was just kind of a big project, so we had to do that. But in essence, it's always one person. If I had to, it really makes a difference. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry, thank you. So yes, so the big issue that I see is time. So if you have more people, it's not that I can't do it, it's just that you're paying, that clock is going for the photographer. So if you're able to have a design assistant or an intern or another person there, and
you can just use that time more wisely. The other big time saver that I find is to go in ahead of time. Style as much as you can, all the way, including the flowers, a day or two before the photographer's in there. So that when you're with the photographer and you're standing there looking at the screen, you can then say, oh, we need this, but there's not as much time being used. If you're waiting to the day of the shoot, you are always behind, because you're looking forward, you're working right then, and you're cleaning up behind you, so God forbid the homeowner's there.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
for
please.
everything. For
Yes.
everything. Installs, photographs. I want to live. I have all the codes in everyone's house. I'm a squatter. I'm like, don't be here for this, this, and this, for sure. Yeah.
I have pictures of what the house actually looks like behind the camera.
Oh, yeah, it's a disaster.
It's
Whoa.
a disaster. It looks like a disaster.
It is. It's a disaster.
Yep.
They would.
It gets put back, but it's a disaster.
Yeah.
It looks like
Also,
It's-
I would
looks like-
say if you can afford a stylist, you might want to bring one in because it does save you time. They bring a bunch of stuff in that you wouldn't think of. They have a fresh eye, and they're styling to the photo.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, you know, they're looking at the screen and styling it to the photo where you might not be as good at that or have as much experience. And then also you can sort of direct it too. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the stylist's not going to overrun you with what they think is going to be the best in the shot. You're going to have a say, so it'll still feel like you.
And you'll be more relaxed on set, and you can
Yeah.
be more. Yeah, you can be more present with the photography and the actual images
100%.
rather than basically running errands around the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they are intense.
They're intense, they're sweaty, they're gross.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, try to minimize all of that. The
Yeah.
sweatiness and all of that. Yeah. Good point.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question.
What's a sufficient amount to budget for your photo shoot and if you're going to use a stylist?
If you're going to use a
I feel
stylist.
like the Jeopardy music needs to be on.
I think all photographers have different rates. And
1
all-
million?
All stylists.
1 million.
Kidding.
Well, it's different. It's different for me because we're editorial. It's a little bit different. So
Yeah.
It's a whole, it ranges. It's a
Yeah.
huge range.
What would you say the low is? Not yourself, but just for the audience. What the low is could go up to, like top names versus somebody per day.
I honestly don't know how much other people charge, so I don't.
Well, I'm doing a book project right now with an interior designer. We're doing all these national parks around, and I'm doing it kind of like as a passion project. Sure. We call those passion projects. So I go 0 to like whatever. It depends on how passionate I am.
you want them to be really passionate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that was an awesome talk, and I think we could keep going on and on, but let's take it upstairs to Theodore Alexander. That's Suite 402, so please join us upstairs on the 4th floor, and thank you so much to our panelists today and to Ellen. What an awesome talk.